Recording in progress.
Okay, good evening everybody. It's Wednesday night, so it's halacha and Tanya. So, as mentioned, next week won't be a class, but in 2 weeks we'll start learning the laws of, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot that are practical. But now we're going to still continue where we left off previously, before the 3 weeks, Tisha B'Av and all that, and that is basically the brachas and food. But now we're going to be learning about the 5 grains. What bracha do you make on the 5 grains? Because there's something unique. The Torah says there's 7 fruits that Eretz Yisrael is praised with. We have chito, saora, wheat, and barley. There's geffen, there's grapes, there's te'ena, figs, limon, pomegranates, olives, dates. But of them, there's 2 things that are actually grains, wheat and barley. And each one of them has a few offshoots. So altogether, halachically, there's something called the 5 grains. In Hebrew, it's called chameshes minei dogan. There are 5 grains. Those grains are as follows: wheat, barley, oats, rye, and spelt. Those are the classifications of the 5 species, which means they are unique in their brachas if they're made in a certain way. Which means as follows: if somebody makes a cake, let's say, out of potato starch, like people do on Pesach, right? Potato flour or soy flour. So then the bracha would be, on that cake, it would be shahako, because it's not one of the 5 species. And we're not ready yet for rice cakes. Now we're learning about Mezonot. But, so, the bottom line is, so those things would be a shahako because they're not one of the 5 grains. If you make something out of the 5 grains, and it's cooked, it's Mezonot. That means if somebody, let's say, will make a matzah ball, they'll cook it, they'll take flour and water, let's say, and cook it, then it would be a Mezonot. It's flour and water cooked. No matter how much of it you eat. If you have flour and water and it's baked, generally speaking, the bracha would be Hamotzi. Generally, the bracha would be Hamotzi if it's made with flour and water. If it's made with flour and juice, now juice includes eggs, oil, but like so a lot of these, almond milk, according to halacha, is primarily water. It's just cooked with some almonds in it. It's not like you take orange juice, you squeeze an orange and you have the juice from it. So if it's, and we'll discuss that probably tonight also if we get that far. But the bottom line is like this: flour and water cooked is Mezonot. Flour and water baked is Hamotzi. You have to wash, make until Sidaim if you eat enough, and you have to make Hamotzi. If it's something made with flour and of the 5 grains, and juice, so generally speaking, it's a machlekes in halacha, is that hamotzi or shahako. The halacha is practical halacha. It's Mezonot. I'm sorry, it's a machlekes if it's hamotzi or Mezonot. The practical halacha is it's Mezonot unless if you eat a lot of it. And we'll explain exactly what that means in practical language. Okay? So if you have flour and juice, now again, you have to keep in mind, juice is including eggs, oil, other liquids. What happens if there's a mixture between water and juice? So what bracha is it then? So again, the halacha is as follows: if the majority is water, it's hamotzi. If the majority is other liquids combined, then it would be a mezanis. Okay? So normal, regular cake, sponge cake, Danishes, sponge cake would be different. I'm not getting into all that now. We're doing practical halacha. So then, you'd eat a bracha on cake would be mezanis. Okay? But what happens if you eat a lot of it and you get full from it? Many times it turns into what's called hamotzi. Okay? Now, to give an example, I'm going to say amounts, okay, what it says in halacha. If somebody eats 8.11 ounces of cake, cake means flour and juice baked. They eat 8, now we have to understand, that's a half a pound of cake. A pound is 16 ounces, right? If you eat 8 ounces of cake, a half a pound, and trust me, there are people that can eat much more than that. But if you eat, let's say, half a pound, and you're full, or even if you eat less, but you're full, then the halacha is, it's a big question in halacha, and therefore it says you have to wash and eat other bread. You can't make a hamotzi on this because it's questionable. The problem is, you're full from it. If you eat 8 ounces of cake and you're not full, then you make a mezanis. But if you eat 8 ounces of cake and you're full, then you have to, okay. Now, what happens if they eat more than 8 ounces, and they get full? We said you have to bench. What happens if you eat 11.85 ounces, meaning 12 ounces or more, up to 43 ounces of cake, and you're not full? That means you ate 45 ounces of cake and you're still not full, you have to wash and bench another bread. What happens if you eat more than 43 ounces? Then the din is you have to wash and bench even though you're not full. That doesn't matter. But okay, that's numbers. But I'm going to speak in a very practical case. Halacha says, though, what happens, let me give you a very, very practical case. There's something called mezanis bread. Many stores sell it. At the time it was stopped. Generally speaking, you have what's called mezanis rolls. Why are they called mezanis rolls? Because it's made out of flour and juice. The majority of liquid is not water. You can have a pizza. Okay, you can have a pizza dough on the box, not the ones they sell, ready now, the fresh pizza. But some days you can order the frozen pizza from New York or whatever, and on the box it says the bracha is mezanis. Okay, why is it mezanis? Because again, if you look in the ingredients, it's not flour and water, it's flour and juice and oil and eggs, and the majority of the liquid is juice, and therefore it would be mezanis. But what happens if you eat a few slices of pizza? Even the mezanis pizza. So now for dinner you're going to have pizza, and you're going to have mezanis pizza. And you're going to have 3 slices of pizza, which is not out of the, crazy. So that, and you're going to get full because there's cheese on it. And according to the Alter Rebbe, cheese and eggs and those things that are given to fill you up is counted as part of the amount. So if you eat 3 slices of pizza, even though it's mezanis pizza, and you get full, you're going to have to wash and bench on it. You have to make al-tis yadayim, you're going to make hamotzi on it, because it's a lot. 3 slices of pizza is a lot, and you're getting full from it. So then you would have to wash on it. What happens if somebody has a meal? A lot of times they have this, and it's really against halacha, and a lot of Rabbonim tried stopping it, but sometimes it's impossible. And that is like this: you go to a bris sometimes, they have it, and they'll tell you it's mezanis rolls. It's mezanis bread and mezanis rolls. Why? Because people don't want to be bothered to wash and bench for a bris. They're in a rush. So now they'll sit down with a roll of mezanis roll, and they'll sit down with an overgrown plate of food, lox and eggs and tuna and the whole thing, and they'll eat this mezonos roll, thinking they can only have to make a mezonos. And the truth is, if you get full from that food, that mezonos roll is not mezonos anymore halachically. It's hamotzi. If you eat, let's say, a mezonos roll for a snack, and it's not that that much, like we said, over 8 ounces or something like that, and you don't get full from it, then you make a mezonos on it. But if somebody is going to eat mezonos bread, mezonos pizza, and they're going to eat these amounts that you get full from it, even if it's from other foods, but it's foods, see, the Alter Rebbe is different. The Alter Rebbe holds, even if it's cheese and eggs, and you would make a meitzi. Other people, like the Mishnah Berurah says, no. According to him, pizza that has cheese on it, and it's mezonos dough, would be a mezonos, because he doesn't count the eggs and the cheese and the toppings as something that would be called pasta, but because they'll be called as something that's made for delicacy. But the Alter Rebbe doesn't agree with that. The Alter Rebbe holds if it's actually cheese or fish or anything that you eat, eggs, anything that you eat to fill you up, it would be hamotzi. So people should just be aware when you have cake and you eat a lot of it, then there are certain times you're going to have to wash and bench on the cake itself. Now, what happens though if you have a cake that's not a dough, it's a pourable batter? Like for instance, sponge cake. Sponge cake, you pour liquid into the pan, and then when you bake it, it becomes the cake. It's sponge cake. That's different than a Danish. A Danish is not made, it's not a pourable batter. A Danish you make with solid dough, dough with flour and water, whatever it is. But what happens if you have a sponge cake? That's different than a Danish halachically. Because it's a pourable batter, you can eat 30 pounds of sponge cake and you still would only make a mezonos. That could never become bread. But if it's a dough, a thick dough, like Danish or other cake, brownies or other cakes, whatever, so then the din would be, if you eat a certain amount, then you would have to wash and bench, sometimes on that or sometimes on other bread by itself. Okay? Now, what happens if somebody started eating this mezonos roll or bread or whatever, or just a Danish, and they thought they're not going to eat so much? They're not going to eat so much. So they made a mezonos on it, because if you're not going to eat a lot, the bracha will be mezonos. And then you change your mind, and you decide to eat more. So the Alter Rebbe holds, different than other opinions, the Alter Rebbe says the best thing is make a ala michya, make an after bracha what you ate until now, then go wash, and you have to eat at least 8 ounces more. You're going to have to eat 8 ounces more. So according to the Alter Rebbe, if you started eating mezonos, dough, a hard dough mezonos, and you thought you're not going to be eating that much, you're not going to get full, so you make the mezonos, and then you change your mind, you want to eat much more. So according to the Alter Rebbe, you should make an ala michya, then go wash and eat another 4 ounces of this food altogether, and then you would have to then you bench properly. Okay? Now, based on this, okay, what happens if somebody takes matzah mel? Okay, this is a simple example. Matzah mel is ground up matzah. Now matzah is a meitzi. It's interesting. Sfardim a whole year make mezonos a matzah of flour and water. But all Ashkenazim, that's what the Sfardim hold. The Sfardim poskim hold the matzah because it doesn't look like bread and it's a flat thing. So then you would make a mezonos a matzah. Except Pesach, they make a meitzi. Only for Pesach Seder they make a meitzi. But Ashkenazim make Hamotzi matzah. So what happens if you take matzah, you crumble it up, and then you make matzah ball out of it? That's how you make matzah ball. You have matzah mel, which means matzah ground up, and now you make it into a knedel, as they call a matzah ball, and now, that again would be a mezanos. Even though it was bread, but now you cooked it. So if you cooked it, it loses the status of bread, and it becomes mezanos, no matter how much of it you eat. Once something is cooked, it loses the status of being bread. What happens after you cooked it? Let's say you rebaked it, then you rebaked it, it goes back to the status of bread. So then it would be hamotzi. Okay? So again, flour and water cooked is mezanos. Flour and water baked is hamotzi. But if you bake it and then cook it, it's mezanos. You rebake it, it becomes hamotzi. Whatever the last thing was that you did to it, that would be the bracha. If you ended off baking it, it's going to be hamotzi. You ended off cooking it, it's going to be mezanos. Okay, that's the halacha. So based on this, by cook, I mean boiling. Yeah, you boil it in soup. Based on this, I know a lot of people disagree with me because they're too lazy, the bottom line is. But there's no question in halacha, according to the Alter Rebbe, that if you take lasagna, and I can explain in a minute what I'm talking about, on lasagna, there's no question that according to the Alter Rebbe, you have to wash if the following things. First of all, you have the lasagna, those strips of dough, so to speak. To my understanding, I might be wrong, but this is what I was told, they're made with flour and water. They're made with flour and water. So therefore, this strip of lasagna, we'll call it, okay, the lasagna strip, that, now what do you do with it? First you cook it. I'm not giving out recipes here, by the way, but I'm just telling you that you first cook it. When you cook it, let's say it's flour and water, okay? Let's stay with that assumption, because if not, it's a different thing. With the assumption, the way I was told from people that know, that it's made with flour and water. So now you cook it to soften it, because it's hard. So now that strip would technically be mezanos, because you cooked it. But now you put it with cheese and all the other things. I don't want to give out my secret recipes. You put out all the stuff or the junk in the lasagna, which is cheese, by the way, which according to Alter Rebbe is considered a food that fills you up. And then you put tomato sauce or whatever you put on it, and then you rebake it in the oven. So basically, if the strip is hamotzi, so the strip was hamotzi, you cook it, it became mezanos. Now you're rebaking it in the oven as lasagna. So now the end product is baked, and it's flour and water. And the inside of it is not delicacies like pie filling or something like that or a lot of chocolate or something that you're eating it, not to fill you up, you're eating it for enjoyment, for a dessert. This is a meal, and you have in it cheese, and now you're baking it. So there's no question that according to the Alter Rebbe, lasagna would be hamotzi. Now I've heard a lot of wacko things. Some people say, no, when you bake lasagna in the oven, it's not baking. Why? Because you have tomato sauce. So therefore it's a dinner cooking, which is absurd. It's not the reality. The reality is cooking is when you have an open flame and you cook it in water and the water is bubbling all over the place. That's cooking. If you have a little bit of tomato sauce in lasagna, and because it's liquid in there, that doesn't mean what you're doing in the oven is you don't cook lasagna. You cook the initial dough of lasagna to soften it. But what you're really doing is baking it. So there's no question, according to the Alter Rebbe, that lasagna has to be hamotzi. Now, what happens if, let's say, the strip of lasagna is flour and juice, let's say it's not flour and water, it's flour and juice, then it's like we said before, flour and juice is mezainis. But if you eat a lot and you get full, then you have to sometimes either wash and bench on that thing itself, or wash and bench another bread. So now let's say somebody is going to eat lasagna for dinner. Okay? Now if you're eating lasagna for dinner, you're eating to fill you up. You're not going to eat a tiny piece. You're going to eat a big piece of lasagna. Now even if that strip would be mezainis, so that's only if you eat a little piece of lasagna would it be mezainis. But if you're eating enough for a meal, you're eating 8 ounces and you get full, or more than 8 ounces and you get full, so sometimes you have to wash and bench, even if the lasagna is mezainis. So people just have to be aware of all these things. With if you cook it, it becomes mezainis. If you bake it, it becomes hamotzi, and so on and so forth. Okay, but otherwise, okay. Let me see what else is here. Okay, that's as far as the din of mezainis, what's mezainis, what's not mezainis, as far as the grains go. But again, that's only if it was made into a flour from the 5 grains. Okay. Now, this din, which is a very important din, a lot of times you'll see on cereal boxes, in the ingredients, it will say wheat bran. Or so if it says wheat flour, oat flour, then it could be very possibly be a mezainis or a hamotzi, depending what the other liquids are. But if it says like wheat bran or wheat flakes, then it's not necessarily going to be hamotzi or mezainis, because wheat or any of the grains only becomes mezainis if it's made into a flour that you added liquid to it. But if it's a piece of wheat that's not ground up into a flour, it's going to be ha'adama. Wheat only becomes unique, or wheat, barley, oat, rice, spelt. They only become unique for brachas, whether it's mezainis or hamotzi, only when it's made into a flour. Now, I'll give you another example. There's something called, like, for instance, Ezekiel bread. Okay? Ezekiel bread, on the thing it says flourless bread. It says flourless. I'm not going into the whole Megillah why it's called flourless. Okay? But that's according to the legal standards. Let's say Ezekiel bread is not called flour. But the way it's made, I heard from the mashgichim of the company, the way it's made, it has a halacha of flour. Halachically, it's flour, even though they call it legally flourless. So any of the Ezekiel breads or any such kosher breads that are flourless, but it's from one of the grains, wheat, oats, wheat, barley, rye, oats, or spelt, then it would be hamotzi. Now, what happens if you have a bread that people make people make private breads in their houses? Some days they'll make a combination. They'll do wheat, and they'll use one of the other grains that are not the 5 grains. What do they do? No, somebody help me here.
Barley.
Not barley. Barley is hamotzi. They'll use quinoa. They'll use spelt. No, spelt is one of the 5 grains.
Oh.
They'll use other types of what? Rice flour. Okay, all that. So that would not be. Oh, so then what happens if you have a cake, or bread, whatever?
What about teff?
What?
Teff. The Ethiopian flour.
I didn't hear what you said.
Teff.
I don't know what that is. I'm sorry.
This is That's
What
what
rice
it is.
flour?
Okay, one second. What happens if you have wheat flour and quinoa or
Rice flour?
rice flour or something like that? So the din is like this. If the wheat or rye or spelt or barley, whatever, any of those 5 grains, are there for taste, it outweighs, even though if it's minimal amount, that means there's more quinoa than what wheat. But if the wheat or barley or rice or rye or spelt is there for taste, it always is a mezenis or a Hamotzi. If it's only there to hold it together, then it's not mezenis. I'll give you a simple example. Sometimes people make fried fish or fried schnitzel or hamburgers, and they'll put into the ingredients, they'll put in some matzah mel or flour. But the matzah mel then is not there for taste. It's there to hold it together, to hold the ingredients together. So then it's not mezenis. Then it would be a shahakol. That's why in a hamburger, even if there's matzah mel in it, or I'll give you another example. Many times, people, when they make schnitzel, or chicken schnitzel, or fish, fried fish, right? They'll put eggs on it, and then they'll put flour on it, right, on top and underneath, whatever. What bracha would be a schnitzel? If you think about it, there's flour on it. The bottom line is, schnitzel, fried fish, is shahakol. There's flour in it. Why is it not counted? Because the poskim write, this is the fact they write, that the flour is there to hold the egg to the fish or to the chicken, and it's not there for taste. I mean, it's only there for color or for hold it together, then the flour doesn't count. Then it's not counted as an ingredient. So therefore, for instance, on schnitzel you would make a shahakol. On hamburger, even if there's matzah mel in it, you would make a shahakol. All these things you would make a shahakol because the wheat is only there to hold it together, it's not there for taste. But anytime there's something in the ingredients that says oat flour, or wheat flour, or barley flour, whatever, and they use it, and it's there for taste, even if it's not the first ingredients, it's all the way down there, but it's there for taste, it would always be mezenis or Hamotzi. But that, again, that's only when wheat is made into a flour. So let's say, I'll give you another example before we go to Tanya. Somebody makes cholent, okay? Now cholent has, again, I'm not going to give out the recipe, I'll tell you the major ingredients though. There's meat, there's potatoes, there's barley, there's beans, right? Now barley is one of the 5 grains. But the barley in the cholent is not becoming flour. If you take a whole bunch of barley, only barley, and just cook it together, and it becomes stuck together like a flour, then it would be mezenis or Hamotzi, depending if it's water or juice. But in a cholent, you're not putting in barley that it becomes flour. You're putting in barley, it stays barley, or it dissolves, whatever it is. So that cholent would not be mezenis, even though there's barley in it. Because the barley is not made into a flour. If you have a food with barley flour, then it would be a mezenis or Hamotzi. Okay, that's the dinim of this stuff. Okay, we'll go to Tanya.